Hi, this is Lisa Rangel with Chameleon Resumes, the premier executive resume writing company, and thank you so much for joining me today. So today we're going to talk about 6 potential pitfalls that can happen when you use ChatGPT to write your resume. Now, I want to say outright that in going through 6 pitfalls that you could possibly experience, I do not think ChatGPT is a negative. I don't think poorly of it in any way, shape, or form. I think it's amazing, and I think the tool is something that it not just in writing, but research and in all different facets of communication and all different areas of business and creativity, it really can be used as a catalyst for idea generation and for acting as essentially a muse for those of us that need to come up with creative topics and different ways of saying things. But that doesn't mean it doesn't come without its cautionary tale of what to look out for as you're using it. And if you were to use it for your resume, we still don't as a company, but I know people are using it. So in doing some tests myself, I just wanted to walk you through what I see as 6 potential pitfalls that you need to be aware of. So this way you do not get caught using it in a inefficient fashion. So the first pitfall is if you ask common questions, you're going to get common answers. And by common, I mean answers that everyone else gets. So if you are heavily relying on it, which I don't think you should, but if you are someone who is going to heavily rely on it as a substitution for their writing, you have to realize that whatever you put in is exactly what you're going to get out. And so if the quality of your prompts or the depth of your questions are really general, on the surface, that's exactly what you're going to get as output. And if you do use it without altering it too much, you're going to basically be getting answers that everyone else is getting. So therefore you're going to sound like everybody else. So that's, to me, caveat number 1, or pitfall number 1. So pitfall number 2 is, and these are in no particular order. So it's just something to be aware of. It's not really a pitfall per se, but the sources for the answers are for information that's published up to 2021. So if you are looking for anything that is current or from 2022, I've seen that, it gives you an answer saying, I'm not able to do that because I only have information up to 2021. So if you do get an answer on something that has something, if you do get a published answer, right, from ChatGPT for your question, and you leave it at that, but there is more information that has since been published in 2022, 2023, and beyond, well, now that's not going to be included in your answer, and you won't maybe know it unless you continue to research, right? Using ChatGPT should be one aspect of your research and your ideation and your creativity. It shouldn't just be where you go and then cut paste. That is, I think, where most people will make a mistake if they do use it. So that's number 2, is just to realize that you're getting data the answers are based on data up to 2021. The third pitfall in using ChatGPT is I've asked 2 different questions about business topics, and I've received the same answer for what should have been 2 different topical answers. So again, if I had only asked the one question, right, and I didn't go further, I wouldn't have known that it was giving me the same answers for different topics, because in some way or another it applied. And I've seen it with a few different scenarios. Now, I'm not giving you examples here. I'm not showing you screenshots and whatnot. I'm not getting into it that much, but I'm asking you to test it yourself. Don't take anything that I'm saying for complete face value. And I think that should be your philosophy with everything in life, right? ChatGPT, my advice, anyone else's advice, anything else you read, is test it out on your own. So you might try 2 different types of business topics, right? Talent retention, talent development. Those are 2 different things. And, I've seen answers for similar, or not similar, I've seen answers for related topics generate the same answers, and they shouldn't be the same answers, things like that. So just test it. I've seen the 4th pitfall is that because the answers are coming from, certain published sources, online and whatnot, there can be sometimes an inherent bias in because some of what's published in mainstream media and things like that, there is and sometimes inherently a bias. And so that inherent bias is now going to bleed through based on the sources being pulled for ChatGPT answers. So you need to make sure you gut check that every time. And you need to use your DEI training, you need to use your DEI lens, and you need to make sure that whatever you are using from ChatGPT is going to be going through a few different lenses of perspectives. And because there is often some inherent bias that is given in some of the answers that I've seen. The next, the fifth caveat or pitfall that I see in using ChatGPT is that the answers that you get, if you're going to use it in some way, again, you need to not just cut, paste, and use it. I'd say the next caveat is, or pitfall, I don't know why I keep substituting caveat and pitfall, but anyway, is you need to check it for inadvertent plagiarism. You might get a great new idea from a question you ask or a prompt you create for ChatGPT, and it gives you a great answer, but it doesn't say where it came from, and it may be someone else's idea. So you need to go through your normal process of checking for inadvertent plagiarism and making sure that you're not stealing what somebody else published a while ago and it's really theirs and it's not common knowledge. So you need to be aware of that. And then, the sixth caveat or sixth pitfall for using ChatGPT is that eventually, assuming it works, right, in your resume, you're going to show up for an interview. And so you need to make sure that you have the stories that you can then communicate and articulate as a human in that human conversation, human-to-human conversation. So that may sound like a silly, obvious pitfall, but none of this is a substitute for being human. That's just the reality of it. And I think this true pitfalls lie when people think this could be a substitute for a human. That doesn't mean it couldn't make things more efficient for us. But when you start to think it's going to be a substitute for humans, either you being the human or the human that you're interacting with on the other side, then if you can't back it up with human experiences, human wins, human achievements, they're going to think it's like having a resume writer write your resume, but you still can't back up the stories, right? It's the same kind of idea. So you can't depend on outside sources, right? Whether it's a professional like myself or ChatGPT, although we're clearly better, if you still can't back up the stories in person, which is why you really want to make sure that if you are doing this, that you have the goods either through online interview prep or through a coach that you're using to make sure, again, because a resume profile is one piece of the overall job search. So you need to make sure whatever tools you're using at any phase in the process, it also will complement the other phases of the job landing process. So if your resume lands you an interview, you better be prepared to land the offer. And then when you get the offer, make sure that, your deliverables, what you're getting in the offer, what the expectations are for the first, say, 90 days, for the first year, it all will be stemmed from what you said you can do initially in this document that you then communicated in an interview, and now it's part of what their expectation is upon you starting. So again, you got to just make sure that it's consistent throughout the process if you are beginning your documents using this tool. So those are 6 pitfalls that I think you should be aware of. If you would like to learn what some before and after resumes look like that land in interviews, I'm going to ask you to join me in my next training that I'm having next week. You'll be able to use the link to register below. It is no cost. It is free. And it's Zoom. We don't record them. We want to protect the identities of everyone attending. So make sure you make it. And you'll be able to register for next week's session using the link below. So I look forward to seeing you on the training. If you have any other questions, feel free to email me at lr@chameleonresumes.com or comment below. Pride myself on reading and replying to every email and every comment as best I can. And subscribe to next week's channel so you don't miss next week's video. And if you like this video, I'm going to ask you to like it. And if you know someone who's been struggling with this using ChatGPT or just resume writing in general, feel free to share this with them. I would be honored that you share this information with them. So hope this helps, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take good care.